Once upon a time in a small African village, there was a young girl named Amina. She had lost her parents at a very young age and became an orphan. With no family left to take care of her, she was left alone and vulnerable. Life was hard for Amina, but she remained hopeful that one day her situation would change. One day, a rich woman named Madame Bola came to the village. She seemed kind and promised Amina a better life in the city if she worked as her maid. Amina, with no other options, agreed and followed Madame Bola. She hoped that things would be different in the big city, that maybe this was her chance for a better life. But when they reached Madame Bola's house, Amina's hopes quickly faded. The house was huge and filled with beautiful things, but it was also cold and empty of kindness. Madame Bola was harsh and cruel. She made Amina work from sunrise until late at night. Amina had to clean, cook, wash clothes, and take care of Madame Bola's children, all while being shouted at and punished for the smallest mistakes. She was never allowed to rest, and if she asked for food or water, Madame Bola would scold her. Amina was not allowed to go to school like other children. She watched them from the window as they passed by, their laughter filling the air. She dreamed of joining them, of learning to read and write, but Madame Bola made it clear that Amina's place was to serve, not to learn. Still, Amina held on to her dream. She knew deep down that she was meant for more than this life of suffering. Every night, after Madame Bola had gone to bed, Amina would sneak into the small library in the house. She found old books and began teaching herself to read. It wasn't easy. She was often exhausted from the day's work, but she pushed through, determined to improve her situation. One day, while she was out running errands for Madame Bola, Amina met an old woman named Mama Grace. Mama Grace noticed how tired and sad Amina looked and asked her about her life. Amina, trusting the kind old woman, told her everything about losing her parents, working as a maid, and the cruel treatment she received from Madame Bola. Mama Grace listened carefully and then said, "My child, never stop believing in yourself. One day, your hard work will pay off." Encouraged by Mama Grace's words, Amina continued to teach herself in secret. She became better at reading and even started writing down her dreams. She dreamed of one day becoming successful, of leaving her life as a maid behind and helping other children who were suffering like she was. Then, one day, everything changed. A famous businesswoman named Mrs. Adebayo was visiting the city to start a charity for orphan children. She was looking for stories of young people who had overcome hardships. Mama Grace heard about this and immediately thought of Amina. She went to Mrs. Adebayo and told her about the hard-working girl who had been mistreated but never gave up on her dreams. Mrs. Adebayo was so touched by Amina's story that she decided to visit Madame Bola's house. When she arrived, Madame Bola was shocked. She tried to hide Amina, but Mrs. Adebayo demanded to meet the young girl she had heard so much about. Nervously, Amina came forward and shared her story with Mrs. Adebayo. She spoke about her struggles, her dreams, and the secret lessons she had been teaching herself. Mrs. Adebayo was deeply moved. Right there, she offered Amina a scholarship to attend school and an opportunity to leave Madame Bola's house. Madame Bola, realizing she could no longer control Amina, had no choice but to let her go. Amina started school the very next week. She studied hard and excelled in her classes. With the help of Mrs. Adebayo's charity, she finished her education and went on to start her own business. But Amina never forgot where she came from. She returned to her village and started a foundation to help other orphans, just like her, get an education and a chance at a better life. Amina's story spread far and wide, inspiring many others to keep believing in themselves, no matter how tough their circumstances were. She became a symbol of hope, proving that with determination, even the most difficult situations can be overcome. And so, Amina's life, which started with so much hardship, became one of success and purpose. Her journey from a mistreated maid to a successful, kind-hearted businesswoman was a story of resilience, courage,